First, a word of explanation. I was originally brought up in the north of Wales, and so some of the words that I used are pronounced very differently from the way they sound in the Middle Tennessee area where I currently live. The word tomato is a good example of that. In Britain you would say tomato, and in America you say tomato. So in the story I'm about to tell you, for those of you in the United States, if you hear me say tomato, I mean tomato. For those of you in Britain, if I say tomato, I really mean tomato. With that, let me tell you my story. The story is called The Candy Striped Tomato. Oh dear, what am I going to do with this child? His diet is awful, so bland. All he'll eat is macaroni and cheese, or cheese and macaroni, cheese and ham if we're eating out. He hardly eats any vegetables. He's totally unlike his older brother Ian. Ian just loves his vegetables, especially tomatoes. "Stephen, eat your tomatoes," I said to him. And he looked at me and he shook his head. He wasn't allowed to say no to his father, but his body language effectively conveyed the message. "Stephen, eat your tomatoes," I said. "They're good for you." "Oh, that's a dumb thing to say. That will only make him dig his heels in even more." At least I didn't tell him that his brother loves tomatoes. That would have been totally unproductive. "What's the matter with them?" I asked. "Don't like them, that's all," he replied. "Why not?" "Just don't like them." Just think, I spent 6 years in college to prepare for scintillating debates just like this. "Well, what do you like apart from macaroni and cheese?" And you know what he said? "Ham and cheese." "And candy. I love candy, especially those red and white striped ones. I just love red and white striped things." "If I bought you some red and white tomatoes, would you eat those?" I asked. "Don't know," he replied sullenly. "Stephen Michael Jones," I said to him, "I'm going to find you some candy-striped tomatoes, and I'm going to want you to eat them for me." Stephen seemed to realize that I'd reached my line in the sand. And he realized that if he didn't eat them for me, there might be some fun things that I might not do for him. And you got to love this kid, though. When he gets frustrated, you can almost read him like a book. His lips formed a determined straight line, his button nose crunches up, and his red hair seems to flame even more brightly, and his eyes almost squished together. Wow, his eyes were clenched tightly shut. I've got him. "Well, all right," said Stephen, almost under his breath. "What did you say, Stephen?" I asked. "Well, all right," he replied defiantly. And so I went to see what I could find in Jackson Perkins seed catalogs. I was aiming to grow some red and white striped tomatoes. There were dozens of varieties in the catalogue, little ones and big ones, round ones and oval ones that looked like mini footballs, and knobbly ones like gourds. And there were of course lots of red ones, and orange ones, and yellow ones, and even some red and orange striped ones called tigers. But no red and white candy striped ones, none at all. I went on the internet, and I still couldn't find any. Oh, what to do, what to do. And then I remembered an old friend from college, Albert Lycopene. They used to call him the mad botanist because he was always tinkering with plants. He had become famous when he invented an ultra-fast way to develop new plant varieties. None of this genetically modified stuff, mind you. No, he reckoned he could make any new types of plants faster than any bio-Frankenstein. He continued to work on ways to make plants faster, and now he was called Professor Albert Lycopene. I called my old friend Albert and explained the problem. The professor thought for a while and then told me that it might be difficult, as there were very few white tomato varieties anywhere in the world. But he had some spare time and he'd give it a try. Several months passed and I almost put aside the candy striped tomato idea. It was a crazy idea anyway. Stephen would just have to go through life not knowing the pleasures of tasting a luscious ripe tomato. And then I got a call from the professor. He'd made some progress. It was just a few mottled grey spots on an otherwise bright red fruit, but it was a breakthrough nevertheless. Several weeks later, more progress. The spots were almost pure white now, and Professor Lycopene had been able to stretch them out. Not quite a stripe yet, but he was getting closer. And then another breakthrough, a red and pure white tomato, one half red and one half white. Excitedly, I took it home to Stephen and showed it to him. "That's not candy stripe," he told me. "Yes, it is," I said. "It's a candy stripe in its very simplest form, one white stripe and one red stripe. And all you have to do is imagine a lot of these pairs of stripes alongside each other." But Stephen folded his arms defiantly and said, "It's not candy striped and I'm not eating it." "I'll eat it," said another voice. It was his brother Ian. "Delicious," said Ian. But Stephen still wouldn't eat it. And so Professor Lycopene went back to his laboratory. But a few weeks later he called to announce success. He had made a candy-striped tomato, and he gave me a couple. So I called the boys into the kitchen. "Here you are, Stephen, your candy-striped tomato." "Don't like it," said Stephen. "Stephen, you have to put it into your mouth first, and then you can taste it, and then you can tell me if you like it." Stephen scowled, but he finally ate the tomato. "Don't like it." Ian picked up the other and popped it into his mouth. "Delicious," he said. You know, kids, Professor Lycopene has spent months developing this new tomato, and you both say exactly the same thing as you did before we started. And then the two boys spoke up at once. "But they all taste the same," they said. At least they finally agreed on something. And then Stephen said something quite profound, something very thoughtful for a 6-year-old. "It's just the skin that's different, Dad. Just the skin. They're all the same on the inside." I said to myself. Just like people. Just like people. We may look different on the outside, but inside we're all the same. All the same. And that's the story of the candy-striped tomato.